My name is John Pearce and I'm the creator of iAbacus. Well, I started teaching in 1970, and in those days the classrooms had 40 students, and I think all I had was a 2-pin 15 amp socket and a reel-to-reel tape recorder because I'd done some drama and English training. Well, these were the days before Ofsted. These are the days before lots of technology, large classes, but we did some massively creative stuff. I remember doing an interdepartmental inquiry on war, where we had a 16mm projector with 100 children in the lecture theatre, and then we went off to do really creative stuff, but it was all paper and pen based. And when I say pen, I'm talking about fountain pen and blotting paper, so it's very different. But the creativity was stunning. No curriculum, no inspections, but wonderful creativity. As a result of this sort of creative teaching that I did, I got promoted to a head of house and eventually deputy, and got involved in evaluation, because I remember saying, if we don't evaluate the impact of what we do, somebody's going to come and use their criteria. And I wrote a book about the evaluation of pastoral care and PSHE. And I was doing training courses and teacher development work. I was one of the first inspectors trained in 1990, and I did one inspection. And I remember walking up the school drive and thinking, I just can't do this, because you're leaving the school, or in those days you're leaving the school just with a list of things that had got wrong and saying, I'm going to come back and check. And I wanted to roll my sleeves up and go back to school drive, down the school drive, and say, how can I help? So that's what I did. I was very fortunate to become an advisor and work for Nottinghamshire Local Authority, where we did a lot of development work, which was based on the notion of the teacher as a professional knows their classroom better than anybody else. The head teacher of the school knows his or her school better than anybody else. So it's about building their confidence and about building their skills, as opposed to imposing a set of targets from elsewhere. I remember being in a school one day and the deputy head said, I'm struggling with doing the self-evaluation form on attainment. I've got all this data, I've got all these flashing screens. How do I, what do I do? And I started to help her with it, and then I suddenly had this inspiration, which was, I said, look, here's a line, there's inadequate, that's outstanding, put a cross on that line where you are. And she went, there. And I said, hang on a minute, just that noise you made, there, was your brain sifting all the information that you know about because you know your school. And I called the colleague from next door, the other deputy, and said, here's a line, inadequate, outstanding, where would you put attainment? And she went, there. And I said, so okay, you've got 2 crosses, why are they different? The first one said, well, I was only looking at attainment at Key Stage 4. The other one said, well, I was looking at 3 and 4. I said, that's your first line. Attainment at Key Stage 4 is, attainment at Stage 3 is. And that's where the notion of sliding a bead across a piece of wire came. So what then happened was people were making judgments, and I was concerned that they weren't checking against criteria. And of course there were Ofsted criteria, and I knew that as an inspector. So when the person makes the judgment about where they are on this line, I say, well, what criteria are you using? And that's important. Then I'd say, what's your evidence that you've met that level? And the critical thing is then, okay, that's where you are. What's helping you and will help you improve? What's hindering you? What's holding you back? Prioritize those, and I'll help you write an action plan. Now, there are lots of forms of action plans, but we developed this notion of a planning strip, which is just for one item of action. One of those helps, or one of those hinders that they want to strengthen or weaken. And it just says, what are you going to do? Who's going to help? What are the success criteria? How will you know that you've been successful, and when you're going to have done it by? And then you add all those strips together and you've got your action plan. It'll actually make a difference to moving that bead to better. I was working with the National College, with heads, and also on the middle leader training courses, the development courses, and using this as a paper-based process. And folks loved it because you've got a visual image of where the beads are on the abacus. And then I had a Twitter account. We all started playing around with Twitter, and I got a great tweet from who's now my business partner, Dan O'Brien. And we got talking, and he said this would make a great piece of software. So we developed iAbacus as a piece of software. It took us several years to do it because we wanted to keep the simplicity of the concept, the visual concept and the simplicity. Because there are out there school information systems that I call electronic filing cabinets that throw out data that just bury teachers under it and heads. And they just get overwhelmed with it. I wanted something really simple. So iAbacus is that process. We launched in 2012 and we were BET finalists in 2014. And initially it was used for school improvement, and we actually inserted the Ofsted criteria. And then later we used it for teacher professional development and appraisal by using the teacher standards. But we're realizing as schools use it, that it can be applied across student learning. It can be used to compare and contrast approaches to learning across a range of schools. So we're finding now that we're having groups of MATs, multi-academy trusts getting involved. And the beauty of the system, you can collaborate with others online, actually anywhere in the world. They can help you create your abacus, or they can share ideas about what moves their beads, as it were. And it produces reports, obviously, electronic reports. And the really important thing is that it doesn't seek to replace other school information systems. It actually enhances them. So it contains no data. You use it for what you want and then draw down the data you need to use within it. It's great to be at BET because I'm meeting so many people who understand this, they get it. They just love the unique nature of saying to a teacher, I respect your professionalism, you know your classroom. As I said, I respect you as a head, I'm going to work from your perspective. And I have to say, I'm getting really emotional about this because it's what we were doing way back in 1970, looking at what we do with a view to doing it better next time. So I'm, as an old man, getting quite excited or being kept young because it's helping people look at what they do with a view to doing it better. It's building their capacity. We're moving people from being afraid of inspectors and people from outside doing quality control. We're building a system of quality assurance. We're building a professional development process. It's making a difference because it's giving skills of professional development.